Hello, today we're going to discuss not, right? A very simple word, but with but there's some information I think it would be interesting for you to know, right? Um, Nothing in particular I want to single out from the definition, some interesting idiomatic expressions, not a, uh, not one word, right? He didn't speak to me, not one word. It's highly emphatic, right? Not at all to say thank you, thanks a lot, not at all, not only but also, which you're so familiar with. And not that she hasn't written, not that she said she would, right? So um, to emphasize something, right? Now, going to your notes from Fowler, we're going to get started with, well, actually, we're going to skip the first part. Yes, this normal uses, not before an adverb, like not entirely, not merely. That seems quite all right. The avoidance of contractions preceding an auxiliary verb in formal writing, right? Initially, that's good practice, right? So I haven't checked. Let's see what they have to say. So yes, here we are, right? The Guardian style guide, contractions. Do not overuse contractions, right? Um, Even the horrific they've, right? Notice how strong the language use is, right? Overuse, horrific. While they might make a piece more colloquial or easier to read, they can be irritant and a distraction. So very strong words. Overuse, horrific, irritant, distraction, and look at this. And make a serious article sound frivolous, right? And they also look horrible. So final position for horrible, clearly they are against them. But you open the newspaper and probably you'll find plenty of contractions, right? And in this regard, try not to forget, right, that Americans think this is the phrase, right? You better, when actually it's you'd better. And remember that you'd, oops, sorry, is actually you had, right? Okay, but I mean, you'll never see them in the New Yorker, to be frank, right? You'll never see contractions there, I think. Point number two is actually one that we're going to pass because it's a use of not with all, right? And of course, they mentioned this typical actually with, and we know that the phrase with glitter. Initially, all is not gold that glisters, or as Shakespeare would have said, all that glisters is not gold, but actually we use glitter, right? All that glitters, glistens, or glisters is not gold, right? So clearly not is placed before gold because not everything is gold. Some of the things that glitter are gold, some of them are not, right? But we're going to go to point number three, and it talks about meiosis. We're not going to find the definition here. Here it is, right? It's kind of meiosis, it's kind of lightities or understatement. So to represent a thing in a way that it is perceived as less than it really is, right? Now, the name sounds too fanciful, and actually, we're talking about negatives when we have a double negative, right? And the example, well, here it says two negatives in English destroy one another or are equivalent to, sorry, an affirmative. His language, though inelegant, is not ungrammatical, right? Lightities, remember, is, or meiosis is when you say not bad, when you mean really good. I praise you not, when I really praise you, and many others, right? So what about what he is trying to explain? He's trying to talk about this note that is, give me a second. Sorry, I got confused because actually I didn't want to discuss the examples in number three, but I want to do that for number five, right? what here Fowler or Birchfield calls pleonastic note, right? Remember that pleonasm, right? Or a kind of tautology when you say see with your own eyes, right? When you use extra words, it means basically redundancy, right? So the redundant use of not, when not is used and it shouldn't have been used, right? And this is very interesting. Actually, in Spanish, we call it expletive not. Expletive, right? An expletive, which is something to fill in, right? Which is actually, if you think about it, a bit of, I mean, the opposite of what we just said when you use extra words. And this is actually to fill in a spot, right? Well, you think about it. The example is one that you probably know from language 2, which is I shouldn't wonder if it didn't turn to snow right now, right? So, oops, sorry. And the one we saw was I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't rain, right? And you think about this logically and say what you actually mean if it rained, right? Right? No me sorprendería que lloviera. But if you think about it in Spanish, we also say no me sorprendía que no lloviera, pero en realidad lo que queremos decir es que sí, que va a llover. So what is going on there? Well, this is what you can call an expletive note, right? So a word you insert there, basically for emphasis, right? I thought I had expletive already there, right? It's no longer there. We have a pleonasm. Now, well, that's very interesting, don't you think? The fact that we use this word simply for emphasis, right? And even though it doesn't make any sense, we also use this pleonastic note or this expletive, not being an expletive, in imagínense que hay un niño sentado y no termina la tarea, pavea, mira la tele, hace cualquier cosa. Entonces la madre le dice, no te moves de ahí, de la silla, hasta que, ¿qué dirían? Hasta que no termines la tarea. Well, that's what we usually say, but actually what we mean is hasta que termines, porque hasta que no la termines, pues te vas a quedar ahí eternamente. So you can see that this is something we also use in Spanish, and that's very interesting too, right? Because at one point, one of the comments was that maybe this was something special about English, right? It says here, English is proof enough that there is something in it congenial to the English temperament. No such thing. This is in Spanish too, right? Before I move on, sorry, I wanted to comment briefly on point number 4, the use of not in exclamations for emphasis, right? What a thing you discovered. What a thing do you not discover? You can see that the use of not is much more emphatic, and that's all there is to it, right? There's also in Mrs. Fraser's book, point number 6, actually, well, this is a bit confusing, but again, it's a kind of, excuse me, it's again unnecessary repetition, right? Or unnecessary insertion of of it in this case. It is not confined to filling up the gaps in Livingstone's life, but deals most interestingly with her father's own early adventures. So, sorry, maybe I should have read from the beginning. Her book, however, is not confined to filling up the gaps in Livingstone's life, but deals with, not it deals with, we don't need to repeat the subject there, right? Because of the not phrase, right? The subject is part of this correlative construction. Now, we are also going to skip point number 7. You can have a look at it. There's some examples by George Orwell. You know, I'm very interested in those examples, but we're going to skip it, right? Because, well, actually, it talks about where we place not, right? And sorry, not only, and how it should be placed next to the item it really modifies. So Catherine's marriage not only kept her away, instead we should have said Catherine's marriage kept not only her away, but at least 2 more cousins, right? So that not only is really next to the word or the phrase, it truly modifies, right? Now, point number 8 is an important one because we use not routinely before a to infinitive, right? Was I not brought up not to scream? But he preferred not to torture. This is the negative of a to infinitive. A negative of a to infinitive takes not before, right? Sometimes it is split to not love them, and this is all right, yes. It actually, as it says here, well, the writer says, Birchfield says, unprincipled placing of not. So unprincipled meaning it's not following principles, it's not following rules. It's presumably intended to give additional emphasis. So clearly you can see that the writer is against this structure. I mean, splitting the infinitive to not love, to not read, to not have, to not demonstrate. And he says this is for emphasis, but it doesn't complain about the not before in point number 4. What a complex do you not discover, right? Why is he against that? Well, because many people are also against splitting an infinitive with a verb like to happily dance, and that's the famous split infinitive, right? So usually when we talk about a split infinitive, well, there we go. Usually we talk about an adverb being inserted, right, to really like it, right? But this is another way of splitting the infinitive only with not, which is also an adverb, right? So he doesn't really like it, but it's really normal in English. And the other way of using emphasis with not is when you say he's no witch, not he. He didn't care for himself, not he, right? Now, these are very emphatic structures. And by the way, I want to refer to the example that goes, and so it is my mother who stole the lie, not he. This is by writer Nadine or Nadine Gordimer, right? They go Nadine. Most people go Nadine. Some just Nadine. She she won the Nobel Prize for literature, and she has mostly written about. Please think about how you pronounce this word. Now read the pronunciation. Apartheid.
Apartheid. Apartheid. Apartheid.
Okay,
Apartheid.
so the, and there's no D here, right? Apartheid.
Apartheid.
All right. The American pronunciation sometimes doesn't really change, right? Apartheid. Apartheid, right? That's a pronunciation. More examples by Anita Bruckner, as in, but I don't like it either. I just put up with it. Naughty, right? So a lot of emphasis. We're going to skip point number 10, and I don't think I have any comments about the other points, right? So a very simple entry for not. Thank you very much. That is all.